Okay everybody, I just wanted to record this video to show you some of the main components of a black soldier fly indoor breeding enclosure. I've got a couple years of experience breeding black soldier flies at this point. I'm doing it in a much larger commercial context. But I do also have one of these setups that I built myself for my own home use. So I will kind of walk you through the basic idea, and I'll post this to the Reddit as well, and in a separate post. And if you have any comments or questions, go ahead and leave them there. That's probably an easier way to respond to most of these. So without further ado, first you're going to want to start with the box itself. I used one of these guys. It's just an outdoor storage container. They're about $100 if you get them from a big box store, but you can usually get them secondhand for a lot cheaper, and they show up pretty frequently, at least where I'm from. So it's plastic, it's fairly rigid. None of this is going to be load bearing, so it doesn't need to be super stout. Mainly what you're looking to do with this is just something that is going to contain most of the heat and humidity so that you don't have to heat and humidify the entire room. I've also built these for other people where it was a plywood box with a beadboard foam as a layer of insulation, and those seem to work pretty well too. It is going to be fairly hot and humid in here, so I definitely would recommend using any kind of particle board, but chipboard does seem to do pretty okay. Next, on that enclosure, you're going to want to have some kind of ventilation. Nothing huge by any means, but just something to keep the air circulating so that the smell from the compost doesn't get too intense in there, especially if you're doing something that has a lot more nitrogen and ammonia in it, like manure. You're also going to need a light. These guys will not breed without some kind of light source. There are specifically purpose-built black soldier fly breeding lights that are about $150. I've used plant grow lights, and those seem to work okay. So all of this depends on what your budget is. You can do them a lot of different ways. This is just kind of to show you the main components. Your heating and your humidity are also very important. Best practices is to have 25 degrees Celsius for the heat and somewhere around 70% humidity. Most of the humidifiers and heaters that you can find out there will have some kind of setting on them. Whatever setting is closest to those numbers, as long as it's within 10% on the humidity and within 5-ish degrees above or below of that. Well, yeah, let's say if you can get it as close to 25 degrees Celsius as you can, that would be ideal. Or you can also get external thermostats for these, and external humidifier or humidity controllers. Humidistats, that's the word I'm looking for. Inkbird is a good brand for those external controllers. You could also, for the humidity, just a tray of water on the floor. It's hot enough in here that most of that water is going to evaporate and keep it at a decent humidity in here anyway. Again, lots of different options for what you can do with these guys. So, oh, that's not the right one. Give me 1 second. Move that out of the way. Okay. So the bin itself, mainly This is just going to be there's lots of different designs for it, but you just need something to contain your feedstock or your compost, a ramp for the black soldier fly larvae to crawl out once they are pupating, and some kind of bucket for them to fall into so that they will just self-harvest and you have to actually pull any larvae out. This whole thing should be covered in some kind of netting or mesh, and the adult flies that are flying around in your cabinet in here will lay on that. They're attracted to the smell of the compost. You won't need these ventilation holes. Originally, this was designed to be a solid closed box. But again, this is in the context of somebody that is not in an environment that naturally just has these guys flying around. This one has a drain. I don't find that that's immediately necessary. Your food stock should be kind of wet and cakey is the best way that I can describe it. And they will eat basically anything, as I said in the last post that I put up. But yeah, they've got this natural inclination that when they're pupating, they will seek, I think they're looking for somewhere drier and darker for them to pupate. And so they will just crawl right up this ramp, and as long as you have something guiding them towards a collection bucket here, then that's all you really need. Let's see, is there anything else? So you've got the enclosure. In my enclosure, I've got the doors, obviously, but every time you open the doors, all the flies are going to fly out. So I got one of the magnetic door screening curtain things where it's like mosquito netting that goes across the front and then has magnets that go down the middle that clip together. I find that that is sufficient for keeping them in here. They will be very attracted to this light. So long as your enclosure itself is indoors, they won't really want to fly out necessarily. They're going to want to stick around here or laying on your netting when they're not doing that. So I think that is basically everything. This was just an example of the spacing of netting that you would want. This in particular, let me see. 0.8 millimeter. Yeah. So 0.8 it usually works for me. I think you can go down all the way to 0.5 and have pretty good luck. I wouldn't go any larger than 0.8 though. The eggs are very small, but they do still need to be able to get through that permeable barrier. And speaking of the eggs, when you're putting the netting down, I would actually recommend only putting netting on half of the box. The other half should be solid so that you don't have neonates just falling down on this ramp here. You want them to fall directly into the feedstock. And you don't want any standing water on the feedstock, because if the neonates fall into standing water, they don't do very well. And I can do another video or another post in the future about some of the finer details of the feedstock itself. But like I said in the first post that I did, they'll eat pretty much anything, and you want this to ideally be kind of wet, cakey, like a thick mud would be the least gross way that I can describe it. Keep in mind these guys are coptivores, and they will survive on manure and decaying plant matter. So anything that you can get kind of close to that sort of texture and smell too will attract the adults to lay on the screen that we'll go over top here. So I think that is most of everything. Again, this is all just kind of rough ideas of the basic elements you need. You'll need a light, you'll need a heater, some kind of way to humidify this, an insulated enclosure, ventilation, and a bin with a ramp. Everything else outside of that is kind of up to you. How big, how small, how insulated, how not insulated, how exactly the spectrum of light that you want to use, how detail control you want on the humidity and the heater. And these guys actually will produce a good amount of heat on their own while they're eating the food. It's just not quite enough, especially if you're in somewhere that gets especially cold during the winter. And the bin in particular, this is a design I just picked up off online, and there's lots of different people that have setups similar to this. Some of them are longer, some of them are even smaller than this one. There is a company out there that makes a round plastic one that has a ramp that goes around the perimeter of the inside of the circle. But yeah, you look around, see if there's anything that particularly strikes you that it would work for what you're doing in particular. Really, you can't go wrong so long as you've got some kind of containment for the feedstock, and an easy way to collect the larva. Those are the biggest things here. So I think that is basically everything. Thanks for watching. If you guys have any questions, I wouldn't comment on the video. I don't check this channel very often, so go ahead and just respond on the Reddit post itself, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks.